conference will now be recorded.
All right, are we ready? Okay, we don't have a quorum yet. Okay, well, let's get started. All right, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get Regional Flood Planning Group started. We do not have a quorum, so anything that needs a vote will defer, and I'll just take that up when it's appropriate. So with that, Noah, could you please do roll call?
Brian Yanta.
Here.
Dave Wegman.
Present.
Juan Sandoval. Debbie Reed.
Here.
Nefi Garza. Kara Tackett.
Present.
Jeff Carroll. Sabrina Santiago. Suzanne Scott. John Beasley. Derek Bass.
Here.
Jose Reyes.
Here.
David Mock.
Here.
Okay. Donovan Burton. Carly Rotzler. Fernando Perez. Jamie McCool. Jared Bowen. Chris Robles.
Here.
Tressa Olson.
Here.
And Suzanne Roberts. Okay. Chair, Jonathan, are you on for Fernando?
Yes, Fernando and Judy Lucio for Tatum.
Okay. Chair, we actually do have a quorum.
Okay, good. Thank you all for joining. All right, item number 2, public comments. Noah, do we have anybody signed up to speak?
We do not.
All right, thank you. Item number 3, approval of the minutes from our previous Regional Flood Planning Group meeting on September 10th. Are there any comments or discussion? All right, so if I could get a motion and a second to approve.
Debbie Reed, a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Thank you, Debbie.
Dave Wegman, second.
Thank you, Dave. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? All right, minutes are approved. Thank you. Item number 4, communications from the Texas Water Development Board. Tressa Olson. I saw Tressa on.
Hi. I have a few updates for today. On October 2nd, the TWDB board approved an item related to Task 5B to negotiate and execute contracts for consultants to perform FMEs for small and rural communities as selected by the RFPGs. On September 12th, the TWDB hosted a technical conference call for sponsors, chairs, and technical consultants. Topics included the technical memorandum due in January, as well as Task 5B, the FME for small and rural communities. We also provided via email a tech memo checklist for y'all to use when you submit the tech memo, a Q&A document from the technical conference call, and then today we sent out a couple of templates for the FME 5B task, which included the FME scope of work template, the community affirmation form, and the FMX one-pagers. If anyone is interested in watching the technical conference call, the recording is available online. And you can always let me know if you have any questions. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Tressa. Any comments or questions for Tressa and the Water Development Board? All right, thank you. Moving on to item number 5. I think we had talked about in our previous meeting that Kara and I had had a discussion with TWDB staff. It was late August. And then since then, and we reported on that. And then since then, I had a conversation with Matt Nelson from Water Development Board. And then actually, literally yesterday afternoon, with Tressa and Reem and Matt, and then also the director, Brian McMath, just to share the same consolidated concerns that this group had raised previously, about the challenges that we had had with getting certain entities to submit projects, and just the continued our concern that that would continue to be a challenge since Region 12 did not see any funding as of yet in either the first or the second round to date. Um, Questions about the rural versus urban, and just that there's such different types of needs, and how do you balance that and having those projects compete with each other. So the same things that we've talked about in this group before. I appreciate the Water Development Board team, and the director Brian, taking the time to sit down or get on a Zoom call and talk with us. I felt heard, I guess is probably a good way to put it. I know they have a lot of challenges and a lot of competing interests across the state, and definitely limited funding. Prop 4 is not passed yet. It goes to the voters next month. So there are just limited funds with a lot of demands on time and resources. But I will say, so we will, when the opportunity for public comment arises, Region 12 will be submitting those public comments in writing. But then we would also encourage the individual members, if you feel, strongly about a certain topic, to also please take the time to submit those comments as well. It was myself and Brian Mast from our team and Kendall on. Kendall, did I miss anything, or are you good? Okay. Thank you. And then the other item from the chair, we received administrative approval from the Water Development Board on our amended RFP. And so we, the board, Region 12, should be adopting this round of amended plans in the spring. And I know our consultant team will be talking about their progress as well. I'm sorry. I just came from one meeting and I'm pinging between too many things. Kendall, why don't you tell them exactly what I should be saying, since my brain was in too many places.
No problem. The Texas Water Development Board
Thank
will
you.
be taking those to their board in the spring.
Too many boards and too many plans.
You're doing great.
I will say just one last item. So wearing my San Antonio River Authority hat, we had our first meeting with the mayor, Mayor Jones of City of San Antonio, right before this introductory meeting. She was very interested in flood control, flood mitigation, which was encouraging. It is absolutely on her radar. So I would anticipate more, discussion both from the Sarah hat and wearing the Sarah hat, but also just needs of the region. And I know that there is overlap between members of this board and the city's stormwater management committee advisory board. Thank you. So I would just let y'all know, it would not surprise me if she wants to learn more about that group and how the city is understanding its needs and prioritizing projects, which I think is good. I mean, the city is actively looking at what can they bond, whenever that is appropriate. So what they choose to pick is going to be important. So I think it's a positive that, the new mayor is, flood control was absolutely one of the main couple of topics we talked about, and that's a good thing. All right, next item, number 6, committee report. Jeff, technical committee.
Yes, I drew the short straw. It's the only one here. So yeah, we had a good meeting, technical meeting. Yeah, no. It's all I think it's all a scam to get me to come in person. But yeah, Ron talked to us quite a bit. And really the main purpose of defining the goals is that encourage the recommended projects that align with the region's goals, and that each project must be associated with the goal. We refine the goals to be more trackable and achievable, like short-term goal being an established baseline and long-term goal being an increase from baseline. The committee recommended a 5-year cycle questionnaire. The way a goal progresses will be tracked. It will be maintained by the flood planning group. Each cycle, there will be a survey questionnaire sent out to various entities asking information on activities that have occurred in the organization that aligns with the Region 12 goals. The questionnaire that outlines for each goal will be contacted and what specific information the entity will need to provide. The committee, we went through all of the goals in detail, and we reviewed them and recommend approve the final goals. The committee is recommending the following comments to the board. Planning group recommends that the development board develop standardized goals for the state to allow each region to follow. The goals are on a 10-year and a 30-year cycle, and the planning group recommends that the goals be on a 5 and 10-year cycle to better align with the flood planning group. To better track the progress of the goals for the basin, there must be more funding available for the sponsor in the region, which was not the case with the last funding cycle in regards to the region. And then in regards to the future 10-year floodplains, we talked about that quite a bit as well. In the future conditions, 10% storm event was not a required deliverable in cycle 1, and thus a new approach must be required. And what the committee kind of talked through was going with the 10-year fathom. And that's kind of consistent with the methodology used for the existing flood hazard area. It uses the development board's recommended scenario, and it moderate increases along the major channels, but more exaggerated change in the smaller tributaries. So that's a condensed version of our long meeting.
Any questions or comments from the group on the technical committee report? All right, thanks, Jeff. Item number 7, which is discussion and appropriate action to approve our cycle 2 goals. We will need to take an action today to approve that, but I believe our technical team is going to do a little bit of talking. I know we can all stare at you and Troy together.
Awesome. Yes, I think tagging on to what the technical committee report we just received, we did go through this list exhaustively, and I think it was trying to come to an agreement. And I'll give a quick example. We actually were putting numbers and percentages to things that were removed. And after the last cycle, we realized it wasn't feasible, but we made these goals not knowing what the end would be. Now we have a better idea what they would be, and how we can actually track these in the future. So we removed a couple. I don't think we didn't add too many more. We just kind of changed the verbiage. We did look at the other regions, and we aligned well with all the other regions, what they had. So essentially, I think in the long run, these we have something, and we also included how we would be tracking these in there. So we not only came up with would these be easier to track, how we would track these. And so, because if we couldn't name a way how we would track them, how would you track it? So we went through that, and again, there were some other comments that we will include, and maybe the later phase comment periods and this or that. But at the end of the day, this is the list we came up with. I'm not going to go through each one of them here in detail, but if there's questions on any specific goal, we will take those questions now. Troy, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I think we've talked through these goals. This is kind of the same set. I mean, there's been little tweaks to them, but y'all have seen them before. Nothing substantive to change any of these.
Yeah, I know
other
y'all
than
have
to
been
make them
working on that
easier.
for a while. I mean, the 2 technical meetings that we had
Yep.
before the one I had to miss, I know we worked on it. So that's 3 entire technical committee meetings that y'all have worked on this. Jeff, when you were giving your report, did I hear you say, I may have misheard this, that we're going to recommend that the Water Development Board adopts a single set of goals statewide, or is it still going to be region specific?
That was one of the recommendations
I think
from
there-
one of the committee members that would potentially make it easier for the goals to be tracked. If
It
they
really
were
would, and it would
consistent.
make it, I mean, it would
Track
make a
from
certain
one
amount
to
of
the
sense
other.
from a state level too.
It kind of would, but there's a lot of difference in the different
I think
regions.
at
and
least
I
have a
think that would-
preliminary list,
maybe
right?
so,
maybe
yeah.
maybe 5 or 10 goals
Yeah,
that
everybody starts
everybody
with
would have.
these.
Right.
This is the minimum.
Yeah, like
Yes.
a base list of things to track, and then regions could augment based on their particular needs.
That makes a certain amount of
Yeah.
sense to me.
And then I think that tied into the discussion of how to track them and how to fund tracking them also kind of all goes together. So there was a request, or there was a suggestion that maybe if the Water Development Board took that approach, that would help out in future rounds of the regional.
But so thinking, how does that solve when if you have kind of this minimum set of goals, when some watersheds are so far ahead of where others are those goals going to be, we saw our biggest gap now is we've already done the bare minimum. We're well past the bare minimum. Others aren't, so they got money, we didn't. How is a statewide set of goals either not falling so far back to bring everyone to a minimum we've already passed, or goes farther than what a lot of the regions want or believe is necessary?
Kara, I think the goal here is if we're going to start monitoring how Region 12 is meeting their goals versus Region 13, Region 11, if all of our goals are different and not somewhat relatable, how do you say, hey, Region 12 is doing an outstanding job or Region 12 is doing a horrible job? So I think that there was the concern by the group was more being on a level playing field and being able to track to a certain extent. But then, yes, I mean, I think you'd have to have the ability to go to your base goals, but you'd also have the ability to improve those goals.
So is some of it, Ron, more about everybody has the exact same goal, or the standardized measure across the state is you've met X percentage of your goals, or you've met X, you've made 50% progress towards this group of goals in this topic area? Is that a better fit than everyone has to have X percentage of communities with gauges? It's you've made equal amounts of progress under certain categories instead. Debbie, you're
I totally agree, but it appears that we'd have to have baseline information, and how are we going to get that?
There was a lot of
Remains
talk
the
on,
challenge.
so a lot of the talk was where does the baseline, who's in charge of developing the baseline, and part of our questionnaire that we send out at the beginning of each cycle will answer a lot of those. We'll get a lot of those baseline questions. Anything above and beyond, yes, somebody, if we're going to say, we're going to track this particular thing on an annual basis and how communities are doing that, somebody would have to take that on, and the board isn't funding that, right? They're funding the goals and how you track the goals. So it'll come through that list of measures. But I think to kind of go back and say, would it be better to track it? Uh, I think there's going to be some regions that the goals wouldn't be applicable, but I think at some way, at least you had some of the, because each one of these goals have an overarching goal: education and outreach, flood warning and readiness. Maybe at least have a minimum goal in each one of those, and you can expand past that, just so you can say, hey, this is how we're scoring against the rest of the, to be able to say, hey, Region 12, this is, we're meeting our goals comparatively to, so a percentage, you're meeting this many this percent of your goal. I think it was something to be more standardized. I don't, because you're not getting a score for there's nowhere that you're getting a score for meeting these goals. It's just we want to show that as a planning group we're doing our due diligence, and so I think everybody in the region kind of takes the same feeling, kind of probably you do, Kara. It's like, we did a lot of this work before anybody else was, and we've met a lot of these goals a long time ago, and so
That's my nervousness of, okay, even if they create this standard scorecard, we haven't scored well on the current standard scorecards because we are at a very different place. And so how do we overcome that? Or has there been discussions at Water Development Board so far about creating standard goals and what that would look like? I mean, the
There-
funding conversation Derek just had is a perfect, they have a scorecard, they have a process. We didn't score well. So I'm a little nervous of
so
everybody being on the same, that's a little hesitation of, okay, does that serve us well or not.
And what's interesting is in the reporting, there is no requirement to report whether, how much progress you're making. It's only that you're making progress on meeting the goals. So currently, nobody has to report whether you're 5%, 10%, or 100% of the way to meeting your goals. So at least for this go around, we're not proposing to put anything into those categories, in the reporting. And so really there's not any way they're going to track that progress and using a scoring system.
Well, importantly also is that no matter what our progress on the goals, it doesn't have an impact on our individual project scores.
That's correct. There's nothing in the scoring right now.
Yeah, this doesn't score projects or this doesn't score the region. And I think that's for part of we leave it open to the region to make their own goals because they know what's better for themselves. And so it was just a recommendation that some on the technical committee felt before we do, that's a chapter 8. Chapter 8. Remember, it's I just want to make sure I'm saying that right. It's the recommendations that we'll make back to the board. That'll come before you too. So we'll get into more detail on what we recommend back. At this time, we're not going to do that. Recommendation is not, it's just the goals at this time.
Debbie Reed with a comment about, as it stands now, reminds me of the preamble to the stormwater UDC requirements. It's really lofty and airy, but there's no substance to it. So do we spend a whole lot of time on it?
I think it's pretty exhaustive list into what you can accomplish as far as making sure that we're meeting the overarching goals. It's pretty airy in the fact that some of these things are really hard to track. We just want to be able to say that we're making improvements into each one of these goals and not sitting stagnant. And I think that was the big thing from the technical committee, is to be able to make this, at the end of the day, this doesn't help your project score any better or get any more money. So take it with a grain of salt, I guess.
Well, there are components within here that actually help you score if you meet the criteria. So it does kind of.
But whether they're a goal or not does not.
Yeah.
And how you meet that goal does not. This is.
I hear you. I think there is an argument to be made, and it's obviously not right now, but as this caveat with, remember, this process is all pretty new, and there is some building the plane as you're flying, or TWDB is flying. So, that is tough. But I do think there's value at some point in having some sort of score, because it reminds me of like the ASCE infrastructure scorecards, where for one thing that gives the community a sense of how bad are the bridges or the roads or good or whatever, and you can use that information to advocate for funding and change. If you go, it's not always successful, but if you are like, hey, our bridges are graded at a D+, that gets people's attention. And that's where my head goes, is there is some value of, it's part of our messaging of, if we have a ways to go and we know that we need to make changes, it's, hey, we're looking at this, we're a C or whatever the right number, this right score is, as we're talking to city council about bond projects, or county about flood control tax, or the federal government about advocating for certain things. That's where I can see value in scoring. I know it's not impacting, it's not, at least right now, tied to the project's scoring at the state level, but there's value, because how do you know? I don't know. I just want to know where I'm at. And I think there's something like, yeah, you just want to show improvement, but I made 0.1% improvement. That sucks. Really, that's not why we're here. And I think it's important to somehow have some sort of comparisons. I like the idea of a base set of goals, and then the groups can expand, or maybe there's different tiers that recognize the fact that we have done a lot more than others, for what it's worth. Any other comments or questions? Because we do need to approve. Well, there's been 3 meetings about these on the technical committee. But do we have to approve today?
Yes,
thought
we
we
do.
do,
We do
yes.
need to adopt the goals. They were sent out in advance with actually extra notice for this meeting in anticipation of extra time to read them and to bring any questions you had to the table today. So if you want to review a specific one or two and talk about the merits of that, we can.
I guess just one more comment, and I liked where Derek was going. You've done a good job of overarching goals and having these overarching goals, and then being able to keep track of some of the activities that are going on in our basin to meet those goals, whether they're specifics or not. Seems important.
No, I agree, Debbie. Thank you. If there's no other comment, I'm looking for a motion to adopt the outline goals for cycle 2. And a second.
Dave Webben, motion to approve the goals.
Second.
Motion from Dave, second from Kara. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion is approved. Thank you all. And thank you, technical committee, for putting in the time and discussion on that. Next item, item number 8, presentation by Bandera County River Authority and Groundwater District on their flood warning systems. And Doug is going to be our presenter. I think this is great, and I just want to, as he's coming up to the podium, you know, with the floods of this summer, both in San Antonio and on the Guadalupe, obviously been a lot more interest. Sarah is heavily involved in all of that, not just within our jurisdiction, but in talking to our partners outside of our jurisdiction, like Bandera. I think we have a meeting scheduled for next week to talk in more detail, but we're doing that with Medina and others, and I think that's great. So I just appreciate Doug and Dave and Bandera. What are you flagging me down for?
Yeah, no, just for the record, we have Sabrina Santiago on the call as well.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Jump in, please.
All right. Well, good afternoon. Happy Friday. I'm excited to be here. So I've got a passion for this. So we got extra time today, so I'm going to go long. No, I'm just kidding you. I can keep this as short as we need to. But yeah, I think it's good to go through this. Derek, I appreciate the setup there. Back when I was with the GS and in my previous work, most of my previous work was actually on the upper Mississippi. So Derek, I connected a little bit. And as you know, working on the Mississippi, you've got to take a basin-wide approach. You've got to take a river approach. And so that's what we tried to do here in Bandera. We were able to secure some funding from grants from Texas Water Development Board. I was able to match some stuff with the GS. And yeah, let's jump into it. So I kind of feel like we're at a picture. This picture summarizes where we're at with flooding. Like we can see the other side over there where we want to go, but we can't quite get there, right? And so the hill country is very unique. As I said, most of my experience was in the upper Miss, very different types of flooding, but a lot of the same principles. Let's see here. How do I advance this? Oh, you got the magic.
No problem.
There we go. Okay, so y'all know the hill country. The reason I showed this slide, though, and I welcome the folks on the screen who aren't in the room. Sometimes you feel a little left out. I want to make sure you're taken care of today. I'm continually surprised at the number of people who don't understand flooding in the hill country, even after the last flood. Well, it was raining over here, but we didn't. Okay, so we have very steep slopes, rocky soils, very little vegetation. It's like a bathtub, I tell people. Water comes down, boom. And the other thing, and if you look at the way storms come across, you know, we get these, it's like a B-52 coming across here and dropping a payload of rain. And this was the Wimberley flood when I came here, and I can talk about it a little bit. So Wimberley's down here. The problem with that flood, all the USGS gauges were down here. There was none in the upper basin. So that 11 inches, 12 inches of rain, that came up like 32 feet in a couple hours. Okay, so I stood, this is very kind of emotional for me because I stood, this was before, this is Wimberley. If you look at this picture way down there, like 40 feet down there is the river. Okay. And so when I first came to Texas, this is where I went out to. Okay. That bridge deck was floated off. Okay. And I said, we've got to do better than this. 11 people died in that. And I would have thought by this time, you know, we would learn some things. I hope this committee, we can move this ahead. So got with Dave Mock, folks in Bandera, we put in some grants. 3 key points I think pertinent for our discussion is very easy questions, hard to answer. What areas will be flooded? How deep will the water's going to get? And when will that flood arrive? Okay. Like I said, in the Midwest, we have days, weeks, and those floods last forever. Very different here. Okay, so I call this a toolkit that we started to build. First thing we knew we needed some infrastructure. Try to get some gauges in the upper basin. Can't put gauges everywhere, so we studied the watershed and tried to pick some priority sites. Added 2 new gauges, a couple of rain gauges. We knew we needed some modeling and flood inundation maps to help us see for the emergency managers when those floods came, what was going to be inundated, at what stage. I kid you not, in the county, the police used to go out and there was a certain rock upstream when they would look, when that was covered, they knew that flood waters were coming. So again, we can do better than that. Last part is communication. People take that for granted. The most important part of this whole thing, working with the emergency managers to understand the system. We spent a lot of time in community outreach. I'm not going to go into all that today, but and then afterwards. Okay, so need to build some new infrastructure, need that near real-time data. In this case, it's about every 15 minutes. Added 2 new stream gauges in the upper basin and some new rainfall gauges, a couple of high-intensity rainfall gauges, because there's been, you know, rainfall up to 30 inches up there in the basin in the past. And Texas love it. It's a state of extremes, drought or flood. People forget. They forget when they're in one or the other. Okay, so a couple things we did. I'm not going to get into all the sausage here. I know I'd love to, but you guys would kill me. You know, the LiDAR data was very important. We had good LiDAR data here. I used to run a modeling team up with my team in the Midwest. Flow data is very important. We did some other cross-sectional work across here. We settled on a HEC-RAS 2D model rather than 1D. 2D gives you the, it moves out into the floodplain. It's just a more accurate model. We had excellent model calibration. It looked too good for me almost to believe it. It was almost a 1-to-1. And then from there, we did some flood inundation maps. I think it's very important to talk about results. And Derek, I like we as a committee, we've got to think about, I appreciate all the work that went into that, but sometimes it's just the simple question is, are things getting better or worse? What have we accomplished? We're all managers or been, you know, a lot of us. If you don't set goals, you'll never meet them. So I'm real happy we had two publications out of this. These are online. All the data sets are there. Anybody else can pick up the models from. One thing great about the USGS, all that stuff, we spent a lot of time getting it public. So we had 2 models on Medina River and the Sabinal River. When we started the Sabinal, we went immediately into a drought. I didn't have enough model water to calibrate. So we did a synthetic calibration, and we had an event here over the 4th of July. So it's a fully calibrated model, but you've got to have, that's another thing, you have to have long-term record to really calibrate your models. I like 30 years, never going to get that oftentimes, but created the flood inundation maps, did the modeling, some geospatial processing. A sequence of maps that we publish actually is a portfolio. the web was down for the emergency managers. They could see there's a 10-foot rise in stage in Bandera. What is the flood doing? And so this is some of that. And these are each by stage, and they're all by action stage. You can look on the website. It's hosted on the Infirm website. So you can see, you know, these color codes to the major and minor flood stages. And then the important thing was with the 2D models, we could get the depth of water. So I didn't put that slide in for brevity, but you can go out here and see, oh, well, this water is covered out here and it's 2 feet deep. It makes a difference whether it's 3 feet or 3 inches, you know. So, and again, that's on this Infirm Interagency Flood Risk Management website. Government likes long names. It's basically USGS, Army Corps of Engineer, FEMA, and I think there's HUD on that too. But here's a picture of Texas outline, and it's covered with these dots where the models are. When we started this, there was none. We were the first in Bandera, so I'm proud of that. That was the first one. As such, they're taking other baseline models and putting on this, cities that have them and such. So that's a great thing. You can go to this website. Here's the outline of the Medina River, and you can click on it and play with it, and you can see, you know, what it was the stage at this feet, where's the flood gonna be out on the floodplain and such. And that's good. But the early warning part, and I won't get into that here as much, is really with the gauge. So there's two separate things, the flooding and inundation, but the early warning. What we're working on now in phase 2, I'll talk about, is early warning. We feel like, matter of fact, this July 4th, we hadn't had rain forever. We had a little event come through, system worked fine. I'd like to get more gauges out in some other places, and that's our next area. So this is kind of phase 2, our early warning system. And I just put this up here because I have to be honorary. People forget 78, 2002, 2015, 2016, you know. So they're reoccurring events. I'm preaching to the choir here, you guys, but this is the educational part. We have to get out to the people. They're not getting this. Planning and living with flood. So I keep asking this question because I'm kind of passionate about it, because we built this in Bandera and I thought this will be an easy sell across the hill country. And I just couldn't gain traction. I think we need to plan, you know, we need to plan and do better. And that's why I like the accountability part. I've sat in on too many meetings and too many things. I'm getting curmudgeon here, but you know where I'm at. Okay, so we're going to build on phase 1. We're going to get new and increased information in previously unmonitored areas. That's those little canyons up in hill country. We're going to get, and we're going to do more rain gauges up there as well. And that's a big part of it. But we've got to work with emergency managers to help them use this equipment. They don't know how. It's not their fault. We just haven't educated them. We want to increase that distance between that flood water and the people. It's kind of like David, I think he's on the line, who was a military guy in the past. You're setting that distance between that enemy that's coming at you. I like that analogy. So we want a more rapid response time and enhanced communication. We want to get, as hydrologists and people in water, we want to get the information to those people. So some new equipment. Fortunately, throughout my career, the technology is getting better and better. I'm really encouraged with a lot of the new sensors and things that we have. We're going to work on flood informatics. So our next goal will be to, and that's the web page, all those tools, those post-processing tools that get out to the emergency managers and the public. to make an informed decision. And trying again to, when you see things coming, get that before it's too late. And again, yeah, I sound like a broken record, but I think this improved communication is so important. I know when we calibrated our model, we sat down with a lot of people. We had some town hall meetings. Some of the old timers who came in from the 78 flood, it was like seared into their memory. And we asked them, we laid out our model runs, and I had my modelers there, and they would say, well, it flooded over here, and it was, and you got it there, and say, okay, that made me feel good. And the post flood and pre-flood, just like we practice for fire drills and everything else. This is an area we can all do better. And then the sustainability, nobody talks about this, and Derek's shaking his head yes. And you do not put sensors out there and leave them alone. It is absolutely, and people think, well, we're one and done. You have to have, and that's a hard lift for a lot of the districts, I get it, is that sustainability. There's a replacement on this equipment, you got to check it, you got to make sure it's working, that operation and maintenance costs. And then we want the quality assurance part. Is the data that we're getting accurate? Is it true? So this is kind of where we're at right now in Bandera. And we've got some of the rainfall, high intensity rainfall gauges. This is Sabinaw over here. And the Medina here. And I think this was kind of unique. I'll give a shout out to Dave. I think he's on the call. Is when we talked about this, there's a little bit of his area that's outside of that. And we put a gauge there in Utopia because we've had some tremendous floods. And I think that's how we should focus on as a group too, is this river basin approach. And I know Suzanne's out here and Effie, and Derek, and we're all kind of disappointed. Maybe we didn't get what we had hoped for. And I'd worked with a lot of this group before, and this is a tremendous team. It is. We've got a lot of great people online here. I think we have a chance to do something great in the basin. So I look at this as not as a disadvantage, but an advantage to us that we can include more of the basin members. And that's what needs to be done. I was headed up our flood center on the Mississippi and at the university for a while. We're on a soft money thing. There were lots of grants I didn't get. So don't feel bad. Nothing's wasted here. Nothing's wasted. This is where we want to go. So the red dots and gauges. We went over this with staff quite a bit. A lot of these just little tributaries that we've known from some experience and people's, these things can, remember kind of the B-52, it can drop a rain bomb in one of these areas and it can get terrible flooding. So we're going to try to cover some more of these areas. And I hope, one of our hopes, and I know this is with David too, is that we want to work with the downstream. And this is I think our goal. Everything that we have is coming down here. Everything that's here in San Antonio is going down to the rural areas. And so being able to connect the basin is important. So phase 2, improved early warning. I think we can get 20 to 30% better, maybe even faster. Enhanced public safety, making those informed decisions, and then that resilience, that scalable architecture. And all this talk of flooding and violence of floods. Nice picture of some flowers. Okay. Any questions?
Thanks, Doug. Any questions or comments for Doug and Bandera? I see Dave's on too.
Well, the only thing I want to say is, before Harvey, 1978 in Bandera was the record. And like you said, 30 to 36 inches of rain apparently fell up in Medina, where I actually live, on the headwaters of the Medina River. And if you can imagine what that was like, I think the city of Bandera got like 2. They didn't know it was coming. And that was the record. It was catastrophic. So it left, unfortunately, Kerrville's feeling this now. It's going to leave a strain. It's going to leave a stain. It left a stain on this area. People still talk about it to this day. And it's devastating because we're in such an area of like extremes with the drought, and then the floods can just come at you. So our district, actually, to be honest with you, we just went through our budget process and we put, for a small district like us, quite a bit of money aside for, to enhance our flood mitigation or warning or education, everything, so that if we don't get any of these grants, we are still going to go forward. And I know Derek understands this, coming from a military background. You have to lead, follow, or get out of my way. So I know it's a frustrating thing with the committee, and I think Doug kind of tiptoed around that we may or may not get funding, but the threat's there. The threat's real. Whether we get funding or not, we still got to do this. So this work is not in a vacuum. It's not in vain. We need to understand this will be repeated. I hear so many people going, July 4th couldn't have been predicted. Not Maybe not that particular storm, but what we're talking about can be predicted. We're in flash flood alley. It's going to happen, and everybody here knows it. So as we go through this process, I would just implore everybody to understand, even if we don't get these grants, this funding, we still got to move forward. We still got to get things done, because it's imperative, because it will happen again. And on a side note, you can see why I lured Doug over to me. I mean, I have a real big philosophy on only hiring people smarter than me. And Doug has got almost 40 years of experience in this stuff. So if anybody wants to pick his brain or call him up, email him, please do, because that's why he's with us. And I feel like he could be a really good resource for this committee. And any way we can help, because we are in the headwaters, we will.
Thanks, Dave. No, I appreciate the passion, because like the funding cycle is what it is, and the available funding is what it is, and we're going to continue to work on making the plan better and advocating at the state for more funding and for our projects. We have an obligation to do that, but there are realities. I mean, the state flood plan has $50+ billion worth of need, and there's like $1 billion or whatever right now. Obviously it's not there. And so I think it's incumbent upon us and our partners to really, you do what you can. None of us have enough resources to tackle everything. But I feel like we have an obligation to do the best we can to do something, and to push ourselves. I appreciate Bandera bringing this forward, and it's some of it is we're going to learn from them, because we have to make some changes in how we at the San Antonio River Authority do things. Hopefully we can share information, and how do we all get better. I call out the city and the county, city of San Antonio and Bexar County, for really being good partners here, right in this area, because we can't do it without each other, is how I look at it. But just share information. And I'll throw out there, not everybody here is obviously a member of the Texas Water Association, formerly called the Texas Water Conservation Association. Their conference is in San Antonio towards the end of October, the 22nd through the 24th. We at SARA are standing up just sort of a work group to share information across the state amongst water entities about flood warning and flood modeling.
Can we capture that metric? Can we capture that metric?
Which metric?
That you're doing the public education in the roundtable.
I'm sure we could somehow. I'm going to dump that on Kendall and Noah. But I think it's just an example of none of us have all the solutions. And so we got to learn from each other, and none of us have all the resources. So if we can share resources, and if there's a gauge that makes sense on the edge of Bear and Bandera that works for both of us, yeah, why would we both put one there? You know, it's like, that
Right.
seems like a really obvious thing, but it's that kind of stuff that we really got to look at.
Well, Derek, I just want to say, as always, I appreciate what you guys do at the San Antonio River Authority. You always are leaders and stuff, and doing that roundtable at TWA. I saw that today, and I appreciate that. The fact you've reached out and you got people going to be meeting with us, I believe, next week. I really appreciate that because I feel like you guys are always out in front of things, and I like your proactivity.
Thanks. Doing our best. Any other comments or questions? All right. Thank you, Dave, Doug, Bandera, for putting that on. Next item number 9, public comments. Noah, do we have anybody signed up to speak?
We do not.
All right. Number 10, date and potential agenda items for the next meeting. The technical committee is currently scheduled to meet on Tuesday, October 28th at 2 p.m. We at the Regional Flood Planning Group, we have to schedule a meeting for mid-November. And I want to highlight one item that is going to be on the November agenda for sure. If for those of you that recall or have been around, in order to stagger our respective appointments to the board, some of us have 2-year appointments, some have 5-year appointments. They're all at different times. At the end of this year, we have 3 positions folks whose terms are expiring. Debbie Reed is expiring at the end of the year. Dave Mock is also expiring at the end of the year. Debbie is environmental slot. Dave is a water district slot, and then John Beasley is a public slot. So we will take action at the November board meeting to, keep those folks on. If they're not interested, we're going to be talking to each of those 3 in the interim to see if they're interested in staying on. But we will need to either reappoint or find new, start the process to find a new member to fill that slot. I don't want anybody to be surprised, but we've got 3 folks that will have to look at their appointments in November.
So let me ask, if those 3 said, I've loved it, but I don't want to, will we before that meeting post for that? At that meeting, we'll make that conversation.
We'll make that decision at that November meeting. And then if we need to post, we would, and which would likely lead to a meeting in like January, where we would go through the posting process and gather feedback, and then hopefully have, new members if required in January.
No pressure, Debbie.
No pressure, Debbie.
Derek, can I make a comment
Yeah.
real quick? And something maybe to consider, because with our office, we get a lot of calls that come in, and I just wanted to bring it to the group's awareness that in Gillespie County, there are 50 new homes being built in their current floodplain. And in Williamson County, it's approximately 40 homes and their sewage treatment plant that will be built in the floodplain with the Atlas 14. And I know that Gillespie is going forward to create stronger damage prevention ordinance or whatever they want to call that. But can we get a little bit more information about the folks, the counties that do have these ordinances, and you've given us such great information on the municipalities. I love it. I've been sharing it with other people, but maybe a little bit more information, because I hear that it's a little scattered. Nobody's the same on what they have, what they're trying to implement in the counties.
That is all true. I mean, I can speak.
Talk about that.
We can certainly put it on there. That might be something that Michael from Sarah's staff can talk about. I'll just speak from San Antonio's perspective. So Wilson, Karnes, and Goliad are 3, obviously more rural counties. And I don't think it's come as a shock to anybody, but a county's ability to statute to legislate and permit is much more limited than a city.
Yeah, counties don't have statutory land use authority, or we can't dictate land use in unincorporated areas.
Right. And so it's just very different. And I know Bear has dealt with this, and we're seeing it in Wilson within our jurisdiction as the growth happens and spills out from the major urban areas. How do they work through that? We have active discussion going on with Wilson County leadership right now, primarily about the flood and the gauges and all those sorts of things. But we have brought up, there are different ideas across the state about how to help counties navigate that. Because in Wilson, I'm not speaking for them, but all of their revenue comes from property taxes right now. They have very little industry, and so they want more people, more business, more development, but they also don't want to ruin the way of life that they're somewhat accustomed to, and that is a difficult balance. I have members of my staff taking a look at, are there examples out there that tries to strike that balance that within what is legal for a county to do, but also helps guide that development. They may not have, they may not have a lot of choices, but it's not just flood. Wastewater is another one. But yes, I'm happy to put that on there. And Michael can talk a little bit about that. But it is a challenge. It remains a challenge for those because of what they can legally do or not do.
I totally understand. Thank you for that information. And I guess also, according to some information, is that one of these plans were approved because the floodplain administrator really didn't have criteria for reviewing these instances. So maybe looking at what we want to try to encourage our downward communities. And I guess there's a little bit of heartburn that we're going and supplying flood control money, especially like in the Harris County Regional, 65,000 new homes built in the floodplain since Harvey.
I think you are summarizing the challenge that a lot of areas face of the balance between development and safety and everything else. It is not easy, especially when you don't have a lot of authority to do certain things legally. But yeah, we can put that on the topic as an agenda.
Just a quick note on that.
Yeah, Troy.
There is an organization called the Hill Country Alliance that has looked very, very closely at this. Counties can do land use planning and they can do land use controls. Williamson County currently does limit impervious cover in new development. And so counties can do a lot more. Hill Country Alliance has a guidance document on how that can be done.
Yeah, there's very specific ways that you can control growth in an unincorporated area. If you can prove that you have a lack of an adequate water supply, any things of this nature. So if there's some justifiable reason to limit the growth, they can do that. But it's an uphill battle.
But yeah, they have a document out if you're interested. I mean, I was thinking specifically of your staff. If you want to connect with them, they've already got some documents out that help advance that.
No, I think that we would love, we are just trying to help our partners.
Yep, exactly. That's
so
exactly what they're doing too. That's
Yeah,
exactly
but I'll chime in. The important thing isn't limiting growth. It's making sure we're not building homes in the floodplain. And that's a different conversation. We really should not be. It is in neither development or any kind of person's interest, no one's interest to be building new homes in a floodplain. That's really where our focus should be. And how can we move that conversation forward and provide those protections? A lot of it's education in the absence of regulation, but who in the world wants to buy a home in the floodplain? And that's really, I think, the focus, which is different than what can you and can't you stop. How can we keep this from continuing to happen?
And it's not about what you can stop. It's about how you can manage the growth in a way that is actually productive for everybody. So for the short term, to provide the homes and the businesses that we need for all the people that are coming to Texas, but in the long term, protecting the fiscal sustainability of our counties and cities. And the counties are really the ones right now that are having all the challenges. And so that's what that the county to county tools workshop that's been led by series of elected officials across the region to really talk about what counties can do to try to, again, protect their way of life as they see it, but also to allow that growth in a way that protects them in the future. So it's out there. It can be done.
All right. So we need to schedule a meeting for mid-November. Noah, Kendall, do you have any suggestions for people to throw out there and look at?
Whatever works for the group, really.
When are you going to be ready?
The week of the 17th.
Yeah. No, it would be the 17th through the 21st.
So we're looking at the week of November 17 through 21.
So just for a little context, at the next technical committee meeting at the end of October, we will be bringing our technical memorandum, and we'll be sending that out ahead of time. We'll be talking about it, discussing it, and then they will take those comments we receive there. We'll need a couple of weeks to turn that around, and we will be approving the technical memorandum at the November meeting. That way, we're not trying to finish that up and have meetings between Thanksgiving and Christmas because it's due at the first week of January.
Okay. So are we looking at like Thursday the 20th, the afternoon? No, Debbie's shaking her head no. Tuesday the 18th?
Yeah, that Thursday doesn't do great for me. We have a RMA board meeting that afternoon. So I can do
18th?
17, 18, or 19.
How does the 18th look generally speaking?
Yes.
Same time, like 2 o'clock, give or take?
Yeah.
All right.
Works for me.
I hear a general consensus. I know it's always a challenge, but we will obviously have virtual.
There's a
ability.
reason there's a reason I got to Zoom. I'm a little far away, but I got Doug. Doug's, we'll figure it out.
All right, so let's do. Let's plan for Tuesday, November 18th at 2 p.m. for the next full regional flood planning group meeting. And with that, we'll move on to item number 11. If I could get a motion and a second to adjourn, please.
Debbie Reed, motion to adjourn.
Debbie? Second?
Dave
Second.
Wegman, second.
Oh.
Or Kara,
Dave, second. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
whatever.
Aye. Aye. All right, thank you, everybody. Be safe.